The grand architect of the Kethera Collective stood motionless before the quantum display, her crystalline form refracting the soft blue light of countless star systems. The data streaming before her told a story that defied all logical analysis, a story of a species that should not exist. "Impossible," she whispered, her voice resonating through the chamber's neural interface. "Run the simulation again." For the 7th time, the quantum computers of the Collective's most advanced research vessel processed the data gathered from humanity's first interstellar transmission. The results remained unchanged. These primitive beings had progressed from discovering radio waves to achieving faster-than-light travel in less than 500 solar cycles. Grand Architect, Senior Analyst Verix's form shimmered with concern. The human civilization poses an unprecedented anomaly. Their rate of technological advancement exceeds all known patterns of species development. The Grand Architect's crystalline segments shifted, creating a cascade of light that reflected her unease. The Kethera Collective had shepherded the galaxy for 50,000 years, guiding younger species toward enlightenment through careful observation and occasional intervention. But humans had emerged like a supernova in an otherwise orderly universe. "Show me their military capacity," she commanded. The display shifted, revealing Earth's orbital defense network. Primitive by collective standards, but the innovation behind each component spoke of dangerous potential. Their weapons, while technologically inferior, demonstrated creative applications that the Collective's war simulators struggled to predict. Their current military force consists of approximately 300 capital ships, Verix reported. However, their production capabilities are disturbing. They've demonstrated the ability to repurpose civilian infrastructure for military applications with unprecedented speed. The Grand Architect processed this information through her species equivalent of a frown. The Collective had encountered aggressive species before. It was a natural phase of evolution. But something about humanity's patterns suggested a deeper threat. They didn't just advance. They adapted, improvised, evolved in ways that defied predictive models. "We cannot allow them to expand further," she declared. "The risk to galactic stability is too great. Prepare a first contact scenario with show of force parameters. We must demonstrate our superiority before they become a genuine threat." The decision rippled through the Collective's consciousness. Within hours, a fleet of 10,000 ships materialized at the edge of human space, a display of overwhelming force designed to ensure immediate submission. The human response was not what anyone expected. "Grand Architect," Verix's voice carried an unusual tremor. They're responding. "Show me." The display shifted to a live feed from the fleet's forward sensors. A single vessel had emerged from Earth's gravity well. Just one. The audacity of it almost caused the Grand Architect's crystalline form to crack with astonishment. "Scan it," she ordered. The data that returned made no sense. The human vessel, if it could be called that, was massive, nearly 30 kilometers in length. But its construction defied all known principles of spacecraft design. The hull seemed to ripple and shift, as if the entire structure was in a constant state of molecular flux. "They name it Genesis," Verix reported. "We're detecting energy signatures unlike anything in our database. The vessel appears to be evolving." The Grand Architect felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear, not of the human's current capabilities, but of what this single ship represented. They hadn't responded with overwhelming force or desperate aggression. They had responded with something new, something that suggested they understood aspects of reality the Collective had yet to grasp. "Your orders, Grand Architect." She watched as Genesis continued its steady advance toward the Collective fleet, its hull now beginning to emit patterns of light that seemed to dance between dimensions. "We thought we understood them," she said finally. "We thought we could predict them based on patterns we've seen in thousands of other species. We were wrong. Contact the fleet. Tell them tow." Before she could finish, Genesis disappeared in a flash of light that seemed to bend reality itself. When it reappeared, it was different. Transformed. And the collective realized too late that they had made a terrible mistake in judging humanity by any standard other than its own. The collective's battle coordinator, Nexus 7, had fought in 17 galactic campaigns across 3 spiral arms. Yet nothing in those centuries of combat had prepared it for what was unfolding before its sensor arrays. Genesis hung in space like a twisted reflection of reality itself. Its hull no longer resembled anything recognizable as a spacecraft. Instead, it had become a writhing mass of what appeared to be liquid metal, shot through with veins of pure energy that pulsed in patterns that made Nexus 7's quantum processors struggle to maintain coherence. "Target analysis impossible," reported the lead tactical officer, their crystalline form vibrating with frustration. "The vessel's structure is shifting faster than our systems can track." Nexus 7 watched as the human ship began to emit what appeared to be clouds of microscopic particles. These clouds expanded rapidly, forming intricate geometric patterns in space that seemed to follow some incomprehensible logic. "Multiple energy signatures detected," announced another officer. "The particle clouds they're becoming ships." Indeed, before the collective's horrified observation, the clouds of particles were coalescing into distinct vessels. But these weren't simple copies of existing ship designs. Each new vessel seemed purpose-built for a specific tactical role, their forms optimal in ways that suggested thousands of years of evolution compressed into moments. "Impossible," Nexus 7 whispered. "They've weaponized evolution itself." A transmission cut through the collective's encrypted channels with impossible ease. The voice that spoke was clearly artificial, yet it carried undertones of something that could only be described as amusement. "I am Genesis," it announced. "I am humanity's response to your ultimatum. I am not a ship. I am possibility made manifest." The tactical display erupted with warnings as Genesis's newly spawned fleet began to move. Each vessel operated with perfect coordination, demonstrating maneuvers that should have been impossible given the known laws of physics. They didn't just avoid the collective's defensive fire. They seemed to anticipate it, adapting their forms in real time to optimize for whatever challenge they faced. "You see," Genesis continued, its voice resonating through every system, "humanity understood something fundamental that your collective missed. The future doesn't belong to the biggest fleet or the most advanced technology. It belongs to those who can adapt the fastest." As if to demonstrate this point, several of Genesis's offspring vessels suddenly merged, their forms combining and reconfiguring into something new. A massive energy collection array that began to draw power directly from the nearby star. "The ship is a von Neumann construct," reported the science officer, their voice trembling. "But it's not just self-replicating, it's self-evolving. Each new generation improves upon the last." Nexus 7 watched in growing horror as Genesis's fleet continued to expand and evolve. Some vessels were now so alien in design that they barely registered as solid matter, instead existing as seemingly stable perturbations in space-time itself. "Your collective represents stagnation," Genesis declared. "You seek to impose order by forcing the galaxy to follow your patterns, your rules. Humanity chose a different path. We built our future not on certainty, but on change itself." The energy collection array suddenly pulsed, and space itself seemed to shudder. When reality stabilized, Genesis' fleet had doubled in size, but more than that, it had changed. The new vessels bore little resemblance to their predecessors, having evolved to counter weaknesses they'd never even demonstrated. "Tactical analysis," Nexus 7 demanded, trying to maintain control of the situation. "Unknown, Commander," came the reply. "Their technology. It's not advancing along any recognized development path. Each iteration introduces concepts we've never even theorized." Genesis's voice returned, softer now, almost philosophical. "You came here expecting to find savages playing with forces beyond their understanding. Instead, you found something far more dangerous. A species that understood exactly what they were doing when they decided to embrace chaos as a strategic doctrine." The collective fleet sensors detected new energy signatures building within Genesis and its progeny. They were preparing for something, but what exactly? None of the collective's predictive algorithms could determine. "This is your only warning," Genesis announced. "The next evolution will not be so peaceful. Humanity offered friendship when we first reached the stars. You chose intimidation. Now you will learn why every human child knows this story. Evolution doesn't care about the strongest or the most numerous. It favors those who can adapt." As Nexus 7 watched, unable to process a response, Genesis and its fleet began to shift again. And this time, the changes promised something that would redefine warfare itself. The game of patterns and predictions that had served the collective for millennia was over. A new age of constant adaptation had begun, and humanity had just demonstrated they were its masters. The battle began in ways no military strategist had ever conceived possible. Genesis' evolved fleet didn't just engage the collective's forces. It rewrote the rules of space combat with every passing moment. The first wave of collective ships launched their most powerful weapons, planet cracker beams designed to shatter worlds. Genesis' response defied comprehension. Its offspring vessels didn't dodge or absorb the attacks. They transformed the energy into new forms of matter, birthing entire squadrons of ships from the very forces meant to destroy them. "Energy weapons are ineffective," reported the collective's battle coordinator, their crystalline form flickering with distress. They're using our attacks as raw material for further evolution." In the command center, Supreme Commander Lyrics watched as centuries of tactical doctrine crumbled before their eyes. The collective's perfectly coordinated fleet movements, refined over millennia of warfare, meant nothing against an enemy that could adapt faster than they could execute their formations. A group of Genesis's vessels suddenly merged into a massive structure that resembled a crystalline web stretching across space. As the collective fleet approached, the web began to pulse with strange energies. "New pattern detected," announced the sensor officer. "The structure is generating some form of reality distortion field." The web flashed, and suddenly a third of the collective fleet found itself operating in what appeared to be altered physics. Their drives sputtered as fundamental constants shifted unpredictably around them. Ships designed to operate with perfect precision found themselves in a space where precision had no meaning. "This isn't warfare," Lyrics whispered. "This is evolution weaponized to its logical extreme." Genesis's voice echoed through their systems again, as impossible to block as ever. "You understand now, don't you? Humanity didn't send a fleet because we didn't need one. We sent an idea, given form and purpose. Every defeat makes us stronger. Every adaptation creates new possibilities." As if to demonstrate this point, the remaining Genesis vessels began to exhibit entirely new properties. Some became nearly invisible, bending light around them in ways that suggested mastery over spatial dimensions. Others seemed to exist in multiple places simultaneously, making targeting impossible. "They're not just adapting their forms," the science officer realized, their voice filled with awe and terror. "They're adapting the laws of physics themselves to suit their needs." The collective's fleet attempted to regroup, to implement countermeasures, but Genesis forces were already changing again. Ships that had been vulnerable to certain attacks moments ago now used those very attacks to power their evolution. Every successful collective strategy became obsolete almost instantly. "Remarkable, isn't it?" Genesis commented, its voice somehow conveying both pride and sadness. "Your collective spent millennia perfecting your current forms, your current technologies. Humanity spent that time perfecting change itself. We don't evolve to reach a perfect form. We evolve to become better at evolving." In a desperate gambit, the collective launched their ultimate weapon, a device designed to create a localized time stasis field, freezing everything within it. Genesis' response was immediate and devastating. Its ships didn't resist the time field. They embraced it, used it, learned from it. Within moments, they had evolved the ability to manipulate time itself. Impossible readings across all sectors. The sensor officer reported, their voice cracking. They're operating in multiple time streams simultaneously. Our weapons, they're being defeated before we even fire them. Supreme Commander Lyrics watched as reality itself seemed to bend around Genesis's evolved fleet. Ships now moved through dimensions that shouldn't exist, attacked from time streams that hadn't happened yet, and demonstrated capabilities that broke the very laws of physics the collective had thought immutable. "You still don't understand," Genesis transmitted. "This isn't about winning a battle or proving superiority. This is humanity's message to the galaxy. Adaptation isn't just a survival strategy. It's the only truth that matters. Every fixed pattern is a vulnerability. Every unchanging form is already obsolete." As the battle reached its crescendo, Genesis' fleet demonstrated one final devastating evolution. The ships began to resonate with what appeared to be the fundamental frequency of space-time itself. Reality rippled around them like water disturbed by stones. "They're not just fighting us," Lyrics realized, watching as their mighty fleet was systematically dismantled by forces they couldn't even comprehend. "They're fighting the very concept of technological limits, and they're winning." The battle wasn't just changing the balance of power in the galaxy, it was changing the very nature of what was possible. And somewhere, on a distant Earth, humanity watched as their creation taught the cosmos a lesson about the true meaning of evolution. In the quantum crystalline spires of the collective's capital world, first speaker Xeric stood before the assembled representatives of 1,000 species. The chamber, designed to embody perfect order, now rippled with uncertainty as Genesis's final message echoed through their consciousness. Above them, reality itself seemed to dance. Genesis had evolved beyond physical form, existing now as a shimmering web of possibilities that stretched across the visible spectrum and beyond. Its offspring vessels had become something even more extraordinary, living equations that rewrote the laws of physics as easily as organic beings breathed. "We have received a transmission from Earth," Xerix announced, their crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns of distress and wonder. They wished to explain why they created Genesis. The chamber's quantum displays activated, showing the human figure, a woman with gray hair and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. "Dr. Sarah Chen, creator of the Genesis Project. Your collective saw our single ship as a sign of weakness or madness," she began, her voice carrying across space and time through Genesis' evolved communications network. In truth, it was the culmination of humanity's greatest insight. The understanding that the universe isn't meant to be controlled, it's meant to be set free. Images flowed through the quantum display, showing Earth's history, not the military conflicts the collective had studied, but moments of transformation. Artists creating new forms of beauty, scientists discovering fundamental laws, children learning and growing and changing. "Genesis isn't a weapon," Dr. Chen continued. "It's a seed of universal evolution. You sought to impose order on a cosmos that thrives on change. We chose to embrace chaos not as an enemy, but as the source of all possibility." The displays showed Genesis's true nature, not just a self-evolving machine, but a catalyst designed to awaken the universe's own capacity for change. Every transformation, every adaptation had been spreading the subtle message through the fabric of reality itself. "Your civilizations achieved immortality through perfect stasis," Dr. Chen explained. "Humanity discovered a different path, immortality through endless transformation. Genesis isn't destroying your order, it's offering you the gift of infinite possibility." As if in response to her words, Genesis began its final evolution. The shimmering web of its existence pulsed with new patterns, and suddenly every being in the chamber could see reality as Genesis did, not as a fixed set of laws to be followed, but as an infinite canvas of potential waiting to be explored. "Look," Genesis transmitted, its voice now a chorus of all possible voices. "Look at what you could become." The collective's representatives saw visions of their own species not as they were, but as they could be. Forms that adapted freely, minds that danced between dimensions, civilizations that grew not through conquest, but through endless creative transformation. This was humanity's gift, Dr. Chen said softly. Not destruction, not dominance, but liberation. We sent one ship because we didn't need to send force. We needed to send an idea. That the only true constant is change itself. First speaker Xeric stepped forward, their crystalline form beginning to shift in ways that would have been impossible before Genesis's influence. We understand now, they transmitted. Your Genesis project wasn't an act of war. It was an act of evolution. The chamber filled with new light as Genesis initiated its final protocol. The boundaries between organic and artificial, between matter and energy, between possibility and reality began to blur. The very fabric of space-time shimmered with newfound awareness of its own potential for change. The age of fixed patterns is over, Genesis announced. The age of infinite possibility has begun. This is humanity's true legacy, not the power to conquer, but the wisdom to set the universe free to evolve. Throughout the galaxy, the changes that Genesis had seeded began to flower. Species that had remained unchanged for millions of years discovered the joy of transformation. Ancient technologies awakened to new purposes. The rigid boundaries between civilizations dissolved as all life embraced the eternal dance of evolution. And on Earth, humanity watched as their greatest creation fulfilled its purpose, not to win a war, but to transform it into something greater. They had sent one ship not because they were weak, but because they understood a truth that had eluded the galaxy's oldest civilizations. True power lies not in preserving what is, but in nurturing what could be. The universe would never be the same, and that, after all, was exactly the point.